Everybody, it's still S.U.M.M.E.R here. Figured that probably it's safe now that we can recap the entirety of the summer. A lot happened over the fastness of the summer, although it was, I'd say, relatively uneventful worldwide. A lot of stuff happened in War Thunder. Obviously, you can see we got a couple things that we got added to the game. Some new mechanics implemented. Beyond that, kind of a good half of it was kind of a fiasco, but we'll start with the beginning. Obviously, in the beginning of the summer, don't have the exact date, but the patch included the FJ4B and the IL-28SH and a couple other vehicles. Modifications. Obviously, we saw ground forces battles change once more. We got the final element of 10.0 for, say, Germany, with their Leopard 2A4 and Japan's Type 90, and not to mention, or not to forget at least, the AMX-40, which was added as well, giving France a 9.7 of their own to compete with everyone. So, brings us back to the FJ4B. These aircraft were basically introduced relatively, and basically what they end up bringing to the table, obviously what I have on it mounted right now, probably the biggest thing to talk about the FJ4B, the regular one in the game, is we have a greater array of payload now. We can now establish the whole fact concept that we have Vietnam-era bombs available to us. That was one of the biggest things to take away from the FJ4B being implemented. Secondary thing to probably also look at is the fact that the guns that are implemented on them are actually the same that were used in the Vietnam War by a couple of the models. I believe, I don't know about the A7 Crusader, or A7 Corsair, but the A8 Crusader definitely used the Colt 20mm Brownings. So that's unique to see. We also had that. Additionally, we also had the introduction of the IL-28SH, as I mentioned before. I have it right here. And its ability to equip gun pods that are the exact same guns that are used by the MiG-21. So, once again, we have that potential there for the next era of aircraft. We have their weapons now available to us. So, that's primarily the aircraft side of the fence in the beginning of the summer. Now to the mid part of the summer, obviously we had the World Cup. That was it was a decent thing to watch. I mean, I had France picked out to win. That's not a big deal for anything, but basically one of the things that was probably one of the biggest takeaways for the summer, I think, between World of Tanks and War Thunder, because this was the thing that was competing between the two games, and War Thunder came out of nowhere, or Gaijin came out of nowhere with it against Wargaming. World of Tanks had been hosting their event for World of Tanks Soccer or football, whatever you want to call it. They had been hosting it for 3 years straight now. Or, I'm going to say 3 years straight, but 3 events straight. And relatively had got good success. In the beginning it was very popular. Second time it did pretty well. And the third time it probably did, in some people's opinions, it did decent enough. It was a good improvement. It was a switch up. You know, we weren't seeing the bland T-62 over and over again. We saw a variety of vehicles competing, but I tell you what, War Thunder took them by storm with this year's event. The whole Sheridan event, I mean, I think I have the emblems for it. Let's see if I can grab them. Yeah, I have the emblem for it, for the, that was a major triumph, in my opinion, for Gaijin. That was an exceptional event. People that weren't really big fans of World of Tank soccer or football, whatever you want to call it, once again, they really, really did like the way War Thunder did their version of the event. Top notch. It really was. I mean, with World of Tanks, you could easily sit there and feel bored playing the game. In the War Thunder version, every element of the game was very much competitive. It was a case of you had to be in the right position and do the right moves to do the right stuff. World of Tanks, you could be anywhere on the map and score a goal, which kind of takes away from the whole point of the whole idea of soccer and football, is You have to be right there on the spot, in the right position at the right time, coordinating. There was a lot of cross timings that you have to do when scoring, and those turned out really nice. And the whole header effect of jumping up and getting the ball, I really like that. I think overall people could agree that was a really good thing. The prices were a little bit lackluster when they had the overall tournament. Obviously the best thing being was the title that you could take away from it. I actually managed to get that along with another friend. But relatively, we'll keep that to a button short. Obviously there was a whole bunch of issues with the Gaijin market in that respect, considering the well, in the element that you wanted to get some of the prizes, if you wanted to hand the coupons off for some of the gold prizes that you could have earned for the ground forces aspect of the game. But moving on from there, continuing from that, the soccer ball decals that you could get, that was a major complaint, and they said that they had a thing ready and fixed for it. I never saw it. They talked about the fact that you could exchange coupons for it. You would have to have acquired 100 or 300 of them in order to get something to work out of it. It was completely ridiculous and absurd. And I've been playing the game quite a bit, but I got nothing from it. I only handed like probably 4 or 5 vouchers in, got nothing from it. So that kind of sucked. Obviously, the way the whole system worked out, you could probably look at someone else's video for that. I might link it if you want to look at it, but that's that. Following that, we had the development of the summer event for the ground forces, and that was a real clincher, where you could earn the famous IS-7 within the game, and it got a lot of hype in the beginning, and I think everyone was basically saying that this is going to be a really hard tank to earn. It was going to be a real, I don't know, it was going to be one of the mother of all summer events. And I gotta say, I'm pretty sure everyone can agree that it's a complete disappointment. Not so much, the tank's performance is pretty decent, but the way everything was earned was just a little bit ludicrous. For example, I think the biggest complaint had to kick off in the beginning with the 10-day period, or whatever, how many days, I forget how much, but where you had to earn the, what was it, the event, you had to achieve so much within the day in order to achieve that award, in order to earn the blueprints. And you had to do so many to get the blueprints, so many for the T-34 blueprints, I'm saying, and then obviously the IS-7's whole blueprints, and then you had to get more stuff regarding, you could get the camouflages, obviously, like I have here for the IS-7. That was one of the things I got. And that was a non-earned thing, and people liked that. I mean, it was tough as all get out. I mean, if people are really curious about it, I could show you the systems that I used and getting those missions completed. Relatively, they were completed with ease, in my opinion. But the big uproar, obviously, for the first part of the entire event, was the fact that they extended it. That's what really screwed people over, because they felt like they had poured so much of their heart and soul into getting the first part done to what they thought. I was convinced I was going to get the camouflage for the IS-7, but I had plenty of time. And it kind of felt stupid sitting there thinking, oh, I got all the days done. Now I have a break in between where, all that's going to happen. And then I think for all the uproar the first event part had, the second part of the event was just absolutely horrific. We had the, what is it? You had to participate in battles in order to earn the materials to produce the parts, which would produce the modules, which would produce the overall hull and turret and gun and etc., etc., etc. of the IS-7. That was really annoying, because that really didn't encourage skill play, in my opinion. It just encouraged you to go out there for the field for 9 minutes, do, a decent battle's worth of fighting, and then leave the battle. And then roll the dice and say, well, if I get, whatever it was to that. And especially, I gotta say, with the T-34E, earning that coupon was probably the most ridiculous part. Because obviously you had to get the T-34E in order to get, you could substitute the coupon, but in order to get the IS-7, you needed to progress beyond the first section of the second part. And with that was really frustrating to a lot of people. But that part done, it was just repetitive gameplay over and over again. There There was no sense of, I need to do really well in order to improve my odds of getting more stuff. There was no such thing as improving your odds. The only thing you could hope for was you did more than 50% battle activity in a fight, and you lasted to 9 minutes. And then the moment that happened, you were seeing people in the battle mass escape the battle, and that really hurt people. You know, it became a time period where people didn't care about winning the battle. It was just a matter of execute along what's defined in the game as a battle, and then leave. So that was a bit irritating. I really hope that they would award it based on a score, like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 score. Stuff like that. That's the way it should have been done. It did open the opportunity for you to, you know, clumsily fall and all that on lines that you were having trouble with. Was it rank 4 to 6? There's a lot of leeway in there, so you could go around. Obviously, you didn't want to die in the beginning, but you could go around playing tanks that you hated, but as long as you were fighting, you were getting the, you know, the player activity, and that was what mattered. So there's debates back and forth, but overall, I think people could agree that was not very much. There was not very much good out of that. Then we fall to my biggest complaint of the entirety of that IS-7 summer event was the Gaijin market. And the Gaijin market was just an absolute travesty. And it's not so much what the event did to the market, but what the event accentuated and exploited the market for. Because obviously we had the random drops that you had to get, like the smoke canisters, the I'm forgetting some other bits. It was like transmissions and such for whatever vehicles, you know, etc., etc. There were special parts you needed. And these special parts, obviously you could go on the market and selling for, and that was nice for some people that had excess parts and all that, but that was really stupid if you were unlucky. And in my case, I can't access the Gaijin store for, you know, the reasons that I'm not meeting of the marks, and there's nothing I can do about that. You know, I've even talked to Gaijin about the whole constraints that I have on my end, that I can't, you know, comply with their market needs. And that's really irritating. I really do hate that, because that makes people want to be dependent on the market. And I get Gaijin wants to make money, but people can't use that market, and I like the idea of having an avenue behind where you can not so much rely on fake currency, which is being paid for by real currency that's going to stay in the fake currency world, to satisfy the needs of the people in the market. And it's a little bit irritating. I get the idea that they want to expand on people keeping the money revolving within the game. That's totally respectable. But it's just the way it worked out. It's very, very hard for people that don't have the Gaijin market available to them. And you often feel like the entire world's against you when you don't have the Gaijin market on your side, which is a very horrible feeling. It should never feel like that. I mean, I know Gaijin's trying to make money once again, but no one should ever feel like they have to battle all the odds on the end of their computer just to beat something that they can't do anything about. It's a really horrible loophole, in my opinion. And people really suffer from that. And I don't think many people talk about that, but that's one of the big issues with the whole ordeal. But moving on, once again, we had another issue with the IS-7, being the fact that, I mean, it was kind of funny to see that someone actually bought a $1,500 IS-7, and then 5 days later, the IS-7's price went down probably, if not beneath 250, it was beneath 300, and what a poor person that had bought that. That's why you don't, you know, obviously count your chickens before they hatch, as the saying goes. But once again, continuing, the fact that people could buy the IS-7 was another factor in the Gaijin market, which was kind of annoying. It kind of took away from the whole idea, and people obviously made a market out of themselves to try and get the IS-7, sell it, and then immediately run back again, or vice versa, you know, get their IS-7 and then go back into the event, make another IS-7, and then sell it on the market. I think that was a little bit irritating for the fact, but people that earned it, it kind of felt like the value of the IS-7 depreciated in many regards. I mean, obviously, they give it to you stock, which is completely just frustrating. After going through 2 parts of the event, through a ridiculous amount of battles just to get the IS-7, you're handed a stock IS-7. You feel like Gaijin should have met you halfway in some regard. for what happened, and that kind of cuts in with the depreciation, obviously. But I shouldn't have to feel like I had to fight to earn a vehicle, and then on top of that, I have to upgrade it myself. I feel like, and then with the recipe system, I liked the way that they did the recipe system where you actually built the tank. That was neat, and people were actually coming together, collaborating on that. I like that with the community. That was a nice collaboration, I have to say, amongst all the other YouTubers and all the other servers. They were handing detailed lists of how to piece it together, and hats off to the people that did that. They were really, really helping make the whole struggle for the IS-7 much better. But once again, we got to turn back to the fact that a stock IS-7 is a stock IS-7, and it sucks. Although it was a nice addition to 8.0 wise. But my complaint with the I'm losing my train of thought here. With the whole recipe system is you have all the materials to make the vehicle. And I'm talking about all elements, engine, all that stuff. I don't think we ever did FPE. I can understand FPE, but I think parts was in there. But you have the whole thing. Smoke canisters. At least give us the smoke canisters. We acquired smoke canisters. Acquiring smoke canisters shouldn't mean we have to research them because we acquired them. If they had broken out some of the elements in the stock grind, I'm perfectly fine with that. That makes total sense. Improving the engine, I get it. Improving the gun, traverse, blah, 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 whatever. Stuff that wasn't a part of the tank or something that could have easily been improved in the tank. Not something that obviously is there or not there. That just makes no sense. But moving on from there, we had the second summer event that popped up, which was, I have to say, I don't know how to really react to the event. After the current day of today, which is the 7th of September, 7th of September, we have the whole thing of the FJ4B being released as a Marine variant, which I think was very neat. But obviously there were repercussions with this, very similar to the IS-7. Not so much in the case of the Gaijin market. Gaijin market was not a factor this round, which I'm happy with. This is the way I believe. That's one of the things I like about the normal market, not the Gaijin market that they're coming up with, is you going in, shilling out some money. Let's get the FJ4B via the distinctions. And with that being said, the FJ4B, what it brought to the table, I'll scroll to it. What the FJ4B brought to the table that everyone was really hyped about was the fact that they were bringing the bullpup AGM-12s. And this was going back to my video, obviously, of the Rank 6 discussion of aircraft and the discussion of SAMs and helicopters. I'll link that video in the description if I forget. But I'll watch the video over and make sure I remember this stuff. But once again, stating with the fact, AGM-12s was the big hype of this aircraft being introduced. I don't think many people would have got the aircraft if not for the AGM-12s, which was a really clever move by Gaijin, I must say, because at this point I'd say they're completely worthless. And I'll basically step into that as I'm talking about it, but the acquiring of the FJ4B VMF 232, the issue that was pronounceable, obviously, from the start was the fact that the amount of people that had acquired the aircraft was in such an exceedance that the entire American team was FJ4Bs. And if you know how to fly if you know flying the FJ4B, I shouldn't say if you know how to. If you've experienced flying the FJ4B before this event came, you could honestly step forward and say, this is one of the worst aircrafts when it comes to dogfighting. It is not an air superiority fighter. It is none of the such that it should be going up against aircraft like the MiG-17, the CL-13, the blah, 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 all the aircraft that are literally opposed against it from all the other nations, even the G91s. And you just run into so much trouble considering this aircraft. And you have an entire team filled with them. So it's just easy pickings. And obviously there was a large spam of them going into the queues. And obviously other countries obliged them by spamming Japan, Russia, and Germany. It was a very big cataclysm of destruction for the FJ4Bs, and unfortunately, I don't know what the whole scenario is on that right now, currently. I'm hoping that, based on the whole ordeal of the way nature works, is people realize something hurts and it really sucks, that they should stop doing it, and then, you know, return the normal balance of the ecosystem back to what it should be, which is relatively F2s and regular, or a decent amount of J4Bs that don't inhibit the American team's capacity to fight. So, stepping from that, from the air realistic issue, we go back to the ground realistic issue. Obviously, I talked about in the video about the discussion video regarding Rank 6 aircraft. One of the key elements talked about was the technologies being added, such as the Fritz X that had been added before the video. And I was talking about the fact that certain other weapons, such as these missiles, the air-to-ground missiles, would need to be implemented for the benefit of the aircraft in the game. And to be honest with you, when I got the missiles and I started doing test flights with the missiles, I was pretty disappointed with them. And this was before they did the whole, you can't use the camera to follow the missile to the target. I was doing this with the camera following the missile to the target, and I was being confused beyond all regard. Using the mouse, because there was a whole complex procedure of you had to fire the missile, so you hit 4 or whatever button you had for that. Then you immediately had to hold U, or hold 4 if you wanted to hold 4. Whatever the missile button was that didn't fire all your missiles off at once. Adjust the mouse, and then on top of that, you had to start guiding the missile, and then you had to keep reorienting your mouse to fix the camera to the target with the correct orientation from the missile, and then the missile's reaction was pretty slow. So there was a lot of cases of you trying to overcorrect the missile because you were worried you were going to make it, because that had happened so many times. The missile would overcorrect and miss the target. Then there was the other issue where the missile, you wouldn't correct in time and it would obviously go around the target, and that, you know, really sucked. But more or less, the bigger issue even then was the fact that the missile's range was kind of relatively limited beyond a decent factor. You could figure they would be able to fire a lot further, but the effectiveness of the missile, you know, it just locks up and decides to go off in another direction, which I don't know if that's an issue, them simulating signal for the missile, but it just seems like the missile's capacity is very much nerfed. At this point, I'd say if you had gotten the FJ4B and didn't get the VMF 232, you would not have been missing much. That's honestly my conclusion regarding the VMF 232 FJ4B. Quite a disappointing aircraft, I must say. The FJ4B as itself, obviously in the video that I had posted a week earlier, had performed quite well, and relatively it was decently upgraded. I mean, I'll show you the upgrades that it had for that video. You know, not too much crazy when it comes to being fully upgraded. It's decently upgraded to the point it has decent enough power regarding the engine, but other than that, it's still not fully upgraded and it's not stock, so it's in that gray region right now. So based on that conclusion, I'd say just settle for the bombs with the FJ4B. I'm not really a kind of guy who goes out with the Hydras. I've tried doing the Hydras with the FJ4B VMF 232 because I don't have them on my regular FJ4B, and I've been giving those a try, and obviously I can't really make a good conclusion on that based on the fact that there's a whole FJ4B spam after everyone was getting FJ4Bs. And it's one thing to have a really overpowered aircraft in air realistic and have people spam it, but it's really horrible when you're playing that aircraft and it's really bad. And obviously the enemy's going to meet you halfway with shooting you down. I mean, I jumped in the CL-13, I jumped into the F-86, F-40, I jumped in the MiG-17. It was no contest in every situation. Either I outran them, I outmaneuvered them. It was really sad to watch. And I honestly feel bad for the players because, you know, some of these people invested money into the whole aircraft, and they probably would have been better off just settling for the tech tree version of the aircraft, and they would have probably just been just as happy. But that's one of the things we can summarize from that respect. I don't know what they did with this. They just put it in the premium section. Okay. But, yeah. So, I think that pretty much summarizes the entirety of the summer. I think we could look at the element now of fall. Actually, no. In the summer section, but looking forward to the fall in that regard. The whole Cologne presentation for War Thunder at Gamescom was quite impressive, I gotta say. The helicopters being showcased was very interesting. I didn't think Gaijin would actually go through with it, but they got really committed to it, and hearing their history and reading up about it, I can't blame them, considering that that was their company's background back in the day. They were making helicopter games, or making a game regarding with helicopters, and for them not to compete in that market would kind of be an absence of power. Obviously, you have Heliborn that's out there to compete, but it's kind of a World of Tanks meets helicopters, and you talk about World of Tanks on the streets, it's not a very high opinion of them, so anything really relatively connecting them in that regard, it's not going to be too hot. So, seeing the helicopters being added, like they haven't done the Apaches yet. I'm sure we'll see them, but obviously the Zulu Cobra, that was a real shocker. Honestly, I also reconfigured my opinion regarding the premium Huey that they were offering. I didn't think that the 30mm version would be that good, thinking that it would only have 30 mils, but obviously the payload variety for these aircraft, or choppers I should say, is actually quite versatile. It's very very impressive. So I've actually sat down and reconsidered thinking about jumping into the beta. But another point I wanted to bring up, or two more points I should say. One point being the fact that if these helicopters are added in the state that they currently are, Russia and the United States being the only countries having helicopters, obviously we're going to have to probably see something with the matchmaking be overhauled, where US and Russia can no longer fight alongside each other, in order to give the opportunity to the other nations to fight alongside nations that do have the choppers, in order to engage in the ground forces regard and respect. For the realistic battles or arcade battles of naval forces, because apparently, I don't know for certain, this might be the case, but helicopters in those battles might be really interesting. That might be a better application for them. I mean, historically though, there's been very little helicopter engagements with naval forces, or helicopters versus helicopters. Which brings me on to my second point, but I mean, I can only think of a couple cases in the Middle East, maybe even in Vietnam, but primarily the only thing I can think of helicopter-wise engaging naval forces was probably the first Gulf War, when the U.S. Navy and Marines were engaging the Iraqi Navy out at sea or in their harbors. That was relatively, I think, the only time you'd ever see helicopters full out pursuing a navy to that degree. But, I mean, it wasn't them alone, obviously. But stepping into the point that I was going to continue with, it might be the possibility that we see helicopters not so much as a support branch for themselves, but or for other nations, or not nations, for ground forces, naval forces, and possibly even air realistic. But they might even have their own game mode, which would be a very interesting thought, because technically that would not be out of the ordinary, and I think that would be very fascinating to look at. You would have the role of the helicopters moving in. I don't know if we'd do the whole simulation. There's a whole discussion about making APCs and the ground forces be more capable on capture points, being the only ones that could capture a point to those regards. Obviously there are holes of that concept, but beyond that subject, talking in regard to helicopters versus helicopters, I think we'd see very interesting concepts. We could have them interacting with ground forces that are AI, interacting, maybe even have aircraft up just to spice it up. You know, have aircraft run at the enemy, or AI aircraft run up and attack the player choppers and see how they react. That could be a thing. But primarily, I think you could see chopper versus chopper, or chopper versus AI ground, which I think would be very neat to see, and I'd like to see it happen personally. But the other question I just thought of right now is how do you look at the arcade battle application of choppers? Because does that mean that they're going to be added in as the higher tier prospects instead of the aircraft? Just an honest question to think about. I mean, obviously we could probably look it up at a video in a moment's notice, but I don't think I've seen anything yet that's talked about it. Also looking into the future regarding some of the vehicles they're adding, Batchat 25T being added for France. I can agree with that. That's a pretty nice addition for them. That'd be really neat to see. Although I don't know where you would primarily add it. I don't think they showed where they were going to add it, but I think it would have to line up with the AMX 13 line. The question is, do you make it a rank 5 or a rank 6 is the other question. But we had the German Leopard light tank, the Begleitpanzer Panzer chassis being mixed with a Leopard 1 turret. That looks very interesting. That should be very nice for the Leopard slash Begleit light tank operators. Very nice to see. As a British player, I gotta say I'm pretty excited about the Warrior IFV being added. It kind of feels like we're giving something worth to the British when it comes to ground. The Strikers are not really up. The Striker, I gotta look at its name quick. Swing and Fire. Those two vehicles don't seem to do very well in a higher tier situation. Obviously they're 8.3 BR for a reason, but bringing an ATGM to the high tier, it just feels like Britain's bringing a knife to a gunfight. Or, in much bigger sense, it feels like they're bringing an ICBM to a really wacky ICBM to a close quarters fight. It just makes no sense. So that's something I'm pretty excited about, and that would also give the ability for the British to, with their autocannon, to be able to take on light tanks or piss off other vehicles or take on aircraft. I'm really excited for it. I'm worried that it's going to jump in on me before I get this Chieftain Marksman, which I'm going to have to grind my tail off now for, although I'm not a big fan of Britain right now. I do like their vehicles for what they've had and applied, or not applied, but they've provided for me. But I'd like to catch that light tank, and who knows, it might be a connection off the Striker. I'm thinking that they're likely going to not do that, based on the fact that Germany has their own ATGM tree separated from their light tank line. So I'm guessing that we're going to probably see Britain get its tech tree probably expanded width-wise, and we'll see the light tank appear on the flank for the rank 6. But nevertheless, it will be exciting to look into and experience, especially. I think APCs to this game would not hurt anyone. I think if you're going to add the Warrior on top of that, I think you have to add the Bradley in that regard. Maybe even a later model BMP. Maybe the BMP-3 to the behind the Object 906, or maybe in front of it. Who knows? That's another controversial thing to talk about regarding Russia. It's hard to say. Give Germany some APCs, other countries APCs, why not? One thing I must say as a criticism to the game right now, my criticism currently is we still have not yet seen the Italian tanks. And that's been fairly irritating. I think it would make things a lot more interesting and a lot easier for the countries as such. Italy needs the ground forces. If Gaijin wants to fully exercise the expanses within the ground forces, they have to start leveling the playing field between all the nations. I think seeing Italy in the ground forces would not hurt. I think the G91 would be a great asset for a ground attack. Obviously, it's probably going to get ripped apart by ground AAA, but I'm diverting course, kind of. Primarily, Italy needs to get its ground forces out of the game. The tanks in the game that are currently here could easily be filled in some cases. Shermans, the Challenger is technically pretty much what the Italians have. But once again, that's something we need to see. I don't know what I can really say elsewise. It seems like they're holding back on the SAMs for now. I'd like to see what they do. But yeah, that's all I can really say. So thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we can cover more in regards to what's going to happen in the fall. So we'll probably do a summary then, and I might do another video up this weekend. So take care, everyone.